Babylon, 323 BC. History's greatest conqueror is lying in bed, completely unable to move. Despite a lifetime of waging war, Alexander the Great finally stares death in the face. At 32 years old, he is a far cry from old age. And just a week ago, he appeared to have all the strength in the world. Within days, he will be dead. But here's the real problem. No one knows what killed him. In some belief, it wasn't natural. Alexander didn't just die. His death shattered an empire overnight. No heir, no clear successor. Within months, his generals would turn on each other. The ancient world would descend into chaos. If his death was murder, it changed history. While historians debate a wide variety of theories, it's agreed that Alexander's death was directly affected by his final campaign. By 323 BC, Alexander's army had already marched nearly 20,000 miles, from Greece to Egypt, through Persia, across Central Asia, and into India. After following Alexander for over a decade, his soldiers were exhausted, homesick, and aging. Tensions were rising within the command structure. His officers were arguing, and his men resisted further campaigns. Some historians suggest that resentment was growing, especially toward Alexander's increasing adoption of Persian customs and royal absolutism. The conqueror who had once led the front was now a distant emperor, and in Babylon, the victory celebrations never seemed to end. Banquets, drinking, ceremony, power at its peak, and pressure beneath the surface. The final 10 days of Alexander's life begin with a banquet. The host? General Medius, one of his close companions. Ancient sources describe heavy drinking that night, and afterwards, Alexander developed a sudden fever. At first, no alarm. Fevers were common in Mesopotamia's heat, but the fever did not break. Day 2, he weakened. Day 3, he could no longer walk unaided. Day 4, his condition worsened, but he remained conscious. Day 5, the fever persists. Then comes the most haunting detail in the ancient accounts. Alexander lost his ability to speak. Not delirious, not unconscious, fully aware, but silent. Outside the palace, rumors spread through the army. The king is dying. His soldiers demand to see him. One by one, thousands file past his bed. The man who conquered the world can only raise his hand in acknowledgement. Then one day later, he's dead. There are many theories as to what killed Alexander. Almost immediately, rumors of murder began. Ancient writers record accusations of a poisoning. The motive? Several powerful figures stood to gain from Alexander's death. From dozens of generals and his army, to Antipater, the Macedonian governor in Greece. According to later tradition, Alexander's own mother, Olympias, would accuse Antipater's sons of administering the poison. It's quite a compelling story. A conqueror, eliminated by his own inner circle. However, there are serious problems with this theory. Most fast-acting poisons known in antiquity kill quickly. They kill in hours, not days. Alexander's illness lasted nearly 2 weeks. Ancient poison lore also carried tremendous political value. Claiming an assassination could legitimize power struggles after his death. In other words, poisoning may tell us more about politics than murder. Our next theory is malaria. Babylon sat amid marshland, prime breeding ground for mosquitoes. Malaria was endemic. Since the dawn of time, it's killed countless victims. Alexander, coming from Europe, surely had little to no exposure to the disease. That would make him a likely candidate for a deadly diagnosis. The symptoms match in part: high fever, weakness, progressive decline. But again, the details complicate the picture. Severe malaria often brings cycles of fever and spikes of delirium. Ancient accounts emphasize that Alexander was anything but delirious. He said many farewells to soldiers and subordinates before he passed. While it's reported that he was inflicted with prolonged fever, he still maintained clear mental awareness and eventual paralysis. Malaria is possible, but not perfect. Another theory is typhoid fever. Many modern historians consider typhoid fever the leading candidate. Typhoid fever is the leading hypothesis because of its remarkable fit into the timeline of Alexander's decline. Transmitted through contaminated water, exactly the kind found in the ancient urban centers, typhoid fever produces sustained high fever, a gradual decline over 1 to 3 weeks, abdominal infection and sepsis, a progressive weakness and paralysis-like state, delirium in its late stages, and an eventual death from intestinal perforation or systemic infection. This timeline fits remarkably well with Alexander's decline. It explains the duration and the progression. Babylon's conditions also match many risk factors for typhoid fever. Babylon has a hot climate, stagnant canals and water, a very dense population, and poor sanitation. Not to mention, campaigning armies historically had massive typhoid rates. While typhoid fever is considered the leading candidate for Alexander's death, one detail still lingers. Typhoid fever does not typically cause paralysis while consciousness remains intact, which leads to the final, most intriguing theory provided by modern medicine. Physicians at the University of Maryland have proposed that Alexander may have suffered from Guillain-Barré syndrome, a rare autoimmune disorder. It causes the immune system to wage war on the body's nerves. Symptoms include weakness starting in the legs, paralysis ascending upward, loss of movement, breathing failure, often preserved consciousness, and death historically from respiratory paralysis. Patients can become fully paralyzed, yet remain conscious inside their bodies. By nearly all accounts, Alexander experienced a high fever first, increasing weakness, loss of ability to walk, inability to move his arms, loss of speech. However, he was still conscious for days, and his body was reportedly slow to decay. This is a pattern which looks very similar to ascending paralysis, which raises a chilling possibility. Alexander the Great may not have even died when observers believed he did. Ancient accounts note something extraordinary. His body reportedly resisted decomposition for days in Babylon's heat. Some historians wonder whether or not the conqueror of the world lay paralyzed and alive before coming to meet death, which he was so familiar with. The Guillain-Barré theory is speculative, but medically coherent. There are many theories as to what killed Alexander the Great. However, regardless of what his actual cause of death was, his death itself exposed a far greater issue. He left no clear successor, no adult heir, no designated regent. And when asked who should rule, it is said that his final words were, "the strongest." Whether spoken or later invented, that phrase itself ignited decades of war. His generals carved apart the empire he built. The unity he had created vanished within a generation. The greatest conqueror of history and his great empire crumbled the moment he died. Alexander had conquered the known world. He defeated kings, empires, and armies across the globe. He was familiar with death, and he had avoided it through decades of battle. However, even the deity of destruction was due to perish. Whether it was infection, disease, or betrayal, his death reshaped an ancient world more than any battle he fought.